Okay, my name is Margaret MacDonald, and I'm going to tell you a story from a book I wrote called 20 Tellable Tales. This story is called Old One-Eye, and it's from North Carolina. One time, there was an old woman lived in a log cabin way up in the hills. Now, she'd been saving her money, and she had a leather bag full of coins hid up with the chimney corner. Now, every night she would sit in her cabin and she would rock back and forth, and she would card her wool. You know, they had a little carding comb and she'd scrape the wool, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, rock and then a card, and then a rock and then a carding. And after a while, she'd commence to yawn. Oh, now over by the chimney corner, she had an old dried salt fish hanging by its tail. And she'd go and take a bite out of that fish after she yawned 3 times. That was her midnight snack. She'd been eating on that fish so long, she'd already ate out one eye, so it only had one eye left. So on account of that, she called that fish Old One-Eye. So when she yawned 3 times, she'd get a butcher knife, go over, take a chunk out of Old One-Eye, chaw it up, and go to bed. Now in that territory, there come 3 robbers. And they heard about that lady and about that bag of gold she had up in the chimney corner. And they figured they'd go out there and they'd get in there after she was asleep and they'd steal that gold. So the head of the robbers, he only had one eye in his head. Other than got poked out in a fight. And on account of that, he was called Old One-Eye, the bandit chief. So Old One-Eye brought his men up there one night. He hid them in the holler down behind her house. And they waited till they thought she might be asleep. And he called his first robber and said, "You go up there, you check on that old lady, see if she's gone to bed yet." And the first robber climbed up there and he looked in. He just went by the chimney corner and pulled out some caulking between the logs. And he put his eye up there and looked in. He could see her. She hadn't gone to bed yet. She was sitting there, a rock and then a card, and then a rock and then a card, and scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. And pretty soon, she yawned. "Oh, sakes of mercy me," she said. "That's one that's come tonight." She meant one yawn. Looked over to where that fish was hanging by the chimney corner. She said, if 3 comes, I'll get out my butcher knife. Now to that robber looking in his crack he'd made by the chimney corner, it appeared she was looking directly at him. He jumped up and ran down the holler. "Oh, One-Eye, she's a witch. She saw me. She looked right through them logs and says, 'There's one that's come. If 2 more comes, I'll get my butcher knife out. We better get out of here.' Oh, One-Eye said, 'She couldn't have seen you. You were just scared.' He called the second robber. You go up there. You check on her." And the second robber went up, and he got up there in the same spot, peeked through that little hole the first robber had made, and she hadn't gone to bed yet. She's still sitting there, rocking in a card, and then a rock and then a card, and scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. And pretty soon she yawned. "Oh, laws of mercy me," she said, "that is 2 that's come already. Well, if 1 more comes, I'll get out my butcher knife." And she looked over to where that dried up fish was hanging. And my laws, that second robber thought she'd seen him. He run down the holler. "Oh, she is a witch, One-Eye. She's seen me. She looked right through them logs and said, 'That's 2 that's come tonight. And if 1 more comes, I'll get out my butcher knife. We better run. She's going to chop us up.' Old One-Eye said, 'Oh, you were both just scared. I'll go see what's going on.' And Old One-Eye went up there. He put his good eye to that crack between the logs and he peered in there. She hadn't gone to bed yet. She's still sitting there, rocking in a card, rocking in a card, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. And pretty soon, she yawned. "Oh, laws of mercy me," she said, "that is 3 that's come tonight. Well, time to get out my butcher knife and take a chunk out of you, Old One-Eye." And she come for that one-eyed fish. Laws, that one-eyed robber thought she was coming for him. He ran down the holler. "She is a witch. She knew my name. So I'm going to take a chunk out of you, Old One-Eye. Run for your lives, men. Run for your lives." And they ran up the holler and they never come back. And she just went along and took her butcher knife and cut a chunk out of that old one-eyed fish and chawed it up real well and went to bed and slept right